Hello YouTube, it's me, Brittany, and today is finally part 4 and our last part of LGBT Pride History You Should Know. Now, I wanted to do a lot more into this series, but unfortunately, other things came up and I got extremely busy, and if you see some of the other videos on my channel, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So, what I decided to do for this video is just kind of run you through a list from the 1990s of people and events that you should be aware of. Please look into these more further, as I'm just going to give you a basis of what they're about. But before I do that, I want to thank every single one of you guys for being here. Thank you so much if you've already subscribed. I love you so much. If this is your first time watching, hit that subscribe button for me down there so that way you can see all of the other LGBT Pride History videos that go with this series. You know, otherwise you're just going to be lost. But anyways, you can't do that if you don't hit subscribe. So, here we go. We left off right at the end of the 80s, just at the beginning of the 90s, and we're just going to skip a few years forward. So we know that in the 80s, a lot of what we were dealing with in the LGBT community was the AIDS crisis and the fact that the government really did nothing to assist us in that, and that it just affected and took a bunch of lives from us. So, in 1994 and in the 90s is when we really started to kind of fight back from this, and the government really started to step in and help us a little bit, as well as medical groups started to step in and say, hey, we really need to address this issue. And one of the things that really kind of sparked that was in 1994, there was a young man named Pedro Zamora, and he was actually in the Real World San Francisco in 1993, but it was aired in 93 and 94. But because of his presence on television in MTV and in that young aspect of the world, a lot of people in that generation really kind of saw what AIDS was doing to the LGBT community and the effect that it was having, and so it really had an impact on raising AIDS awareness. So you should know about Pedro Zamora. A lot of people my age might have remembered watching The Real World at that time, and seeing him on the show. He was actually a really fun character on the show. The next person you should know about is in 1996, Kelly Peterson funded the first gay-straight alliance in a high school in Salt Lake City, Utah. Now, this organization has expanded to be in many high schools throughout the country, and it has been a huge outlet for LGBT youth to just kind of like find themselves and just kind of have some friends that they know that they can get along with, and have a safe space in their high school. So my high school growing up didn't actually get a gay-straight alliance until about 7 years after I graduated. But I definitely would have loved to. I probably would have been a lot more comfortable coming out in high school, had I had that outlet to feel protected by, but I didn't have that. So, but that was formed in 1996, but it took a long time. So now most high schools in the country have a gay-straight alliance in their high school, but it did take till around 2010 for that to happen. The next thing you should know, and everybody kind of knows this story, but I'm just kind of mentioning it briefly, but in 1997, Ellen became the very first person to come out openly on primetime television, and become the very first openly gay lead character in a primetime television show, or any television show for that matter. Many people know the history that she lost the show the next year, and then she was like down for a year and a half, and then had a banging awesome stand-up special in New York City at the Beacon, and it just kind of blew her career back up in 1999. And if you have not seen that special, please look it up. It is on Netflix, and it is Ellen at her best, way before what we've seen in the last 20 years since. But anyways, then I'll turn my page over so I get my next notes. The next thing you know are two things, a sad thing and a good thing that happened in 1998, and this is not going to stick in there, so I'll just stick it there. But anyways, the next thing that you should know, the first thing in 1998, the sad thing that is the story of Matthew Shepard. So Matthew Shepard was a student at the University of Wyoming, and who was at a bar and was basically abducted and beaten and tied to a fence post and left there overnight. And then 6 days later he died. And he was a huge controversy. And then later on, I'm gonna mention Matthew Shepard again. But if you want to know more about the story of Matthew Shepard, it was a very, very sad thing that happened. And it really kind of brought to light to at least Central America, the hate and discrimination and abuse and the danger that it was to be LGBT in at least central rural areas in America. So I personally would recommend that if you want to know more, please check out a show called The Laramie Project. There is an actual movie version, but I recommend reading the play script first, and then going in and watching the movie. They take a little bit out of the script from the play to shorten it up for the movie form, but I just think that you should get all the story. But the movie is still really, really good. Also very, very sad. So yeah, definitely go check out the Laramie Project if you want to find out more about Matthew Shepard, and we'll talk about more about him in just a second. So this video is going to be kind of long, guys, just so you know. I'm going to burst through a bunch of information. The next thing in 1998 is the very first openly gay or lesbian candidate was elected to office in Wisconsin to the House of Representatives. Tammy Baldwin was her name, yeah, so this is progress for us. In 1998, we're now we're being elected into official state offices and not just city offices. Then the next big news that we need to really discuss is in 2004 that Massachusetts became the first state to recognize and legalize same-sex marriage within the state. Now, it was a huge controversy, and many other states followed, or not many, but small amounts of states have followed periodically over the last few years, all the way up to around 2010, and then it went to the Supreme Court, and then in 2015, we'll get to that in a second. But anyways, so 2004, Massachusetts becomes the very first state to legalize same-sex marriage. I remember I was living in Los Angeles and New York City in that time period, and I remember having friends that took trains from New York up to Massachusetts just to get married on the within a week after it was passed. But yeah. So it was a really big thing. And then for trans people, the very first elected trans person was in 2006. Kim Coco in Hawaii was elected to the State Board of Education. She was also an attorney. So that's more progress for us. And now, as we know, we have had at least 10 or 12 other trans people that have been elected throughout the country into bigger offices, state representatives and stuff like that. So we have progressed a lot further, but there's definitely more that we can go. Then the next big bit of information and big news especially for transgender people, but also for all of LGBT people in general, was Obama signing the Matthew Shepard Act. I told you I was going to bring it back up again. So the Matthew Shepard Act was basically made it a hate crime to attack anybody based on sexual orientation, gender identity, any of the LGBT Q plus reasons. It was basically the very first law that actually protected trans people legally in any form or fashion. So that was a huge thing for us. Now, of course, we know that now those have been lifted by someone else, but hopefully we'll get that stuff back. 2011. Next major thing is the military. For me, this was kind of a big deal because I was raised by a soldier, and I grew up around the military my whole life. And so growing up being a kind of a closet case and kind of knowing, if I were to have joined the military like my father and a lot of my family expected and, really wanted for me, I would have had to kind of remain hidden and in the closet, and so the repealing of the Don't Ask, Don't Tell in 2011, I mean, I never was personally in the military, but it was kind of a big deal for me because I was like, dang, that was a huge reason why I never served my country, even though everybody else in my family has. So but yeah, so Don't Ask, Don't Tell, Please, if you don't know anything about that, please look that up for sure. And then back to the last thing we're going to talk about, which is what we were talking about a second ago with Massachusetts. So after 2004, Massachusetts, a few other states slowly started to legalize same-sex marriage, and then it was taken to the Supreme Court because some states were like, no, we're not going to do this. And then we also know after, in 2015, after the Supreme said you have to do this, you have to legalize and have to recognize their same-sex marriages, there were still some people in some states who did not want to recognize that. So and there was cases, and we heard about all the viral things that went viral for those. But yeah, so like I said, I really wanted this series to be a little bit more, but I got really busy with some things. I have a bunch of other things I want to talk to you guys. I had a laser hair treatment coming up. I actually got my own personal laser hair remover thing, and as soon as I figure out how to use it, I'm actually going to do a review for you guys, so that you guys, if you're interested in purchasing something like that, you can have an idea of what you're looking for, what you're going to get yourself into. So if you want that, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Remember, you can always find me on Facebook at Brittany Rose. You can also find me on Twitter at Brittany Rose 2. I love every single one of you guys. Have a wonderful day. Bye bye, everybody.